So just I'd like to introduce the World Art Day or the World Day, the World Jazz Day, and how we build the differentiation. So we remember top 14 actually. UNCCT parties invited the GEF during GEF7 to provide a technical and financing support for capacity building, reporting, and voluntary targets. And voluntary national organization targets. So NDN was included in GEF7 non-evaluation area strategy, promoting a mix of investment, thinking, integration, with the GEF impact program approaches to generate multiple benefits, and harnessing private sectors and expertise to finance investment in sustainable management. So when the GEF launched the NDN incentive target programs in 2016, the objective was to support 60 countries to establish national voluntary targets for NDN. Up to date, 128 countries committed to set national targets for a non-degradation neutral world. So the GEF has continued to support country parties in the process through the country investment and key enabling activities project. So this GEF Day actually is not going to highlight our work, but actually the work of the different stakeholders involved in the GEF partnership, and who have been advancing on the non-degradation neutrality agenda. And so that's why we will have 3 sessions. So one to listen to the advices from the field, a second session on gender and the project, and then a third session and discussion about where we go from here and what the way forward about NDN. So for the first session, I will be pleased to call the panel, but maybe yes, I'm going to call the panel. For the second session, we will start with a film, so you need to pay attention because when people are on stage, they cannot watch the screen. So I would like to Miss Borwan Masumbuku, German Gonzalez, Garcia Leadership, and Mark Dobre, please. The first session is about NDN and listing voices from the ground. So we asked the different stakeholders from government, from NGOs, from GEF agencies, from science, to explain the work they have been doing on NDN over GEF7. So if you remember, it's in Ankara in Turkey at COP12, but the non-degradation agenda, the NDN agenda was designed. And since the convention has been working to make the NDN concept a reality. So there is an official definition of NDN adopted in COP12, describing NDN as a state whereby the amount and quality of land resources necessary to support ecosystem functions and services and enhance food security remain stable or increase within specified temporal and spatial scales of ecosystems. Basically, the idea is actually simple. It means securing enough healthy and productive resources by avoiding land degradation whenever it's possible, better managing the land, and restoring the land that is already degraded. So the balance between the 3 ideas: first, avoiding land degradation; 2, promote sustainable land management; and 3, restore lands make sense in the context of the GF. And actually, the GF as a financing mechanism of the convention has been supporting countries in their effort to build institutional capacities implement sustainable land management, promote better land use planning for multiple benefits for nature, for land, and for people. So in this exercise, Turkey has been a pioneer to develop a JEF project to design their land LDN targets and demonstrate their approach, for instance, in the Upper Sakarya Basin, JEF 6. And more recently, the Kazakari region, and there is a project still underway. So I'm very pleased to introduce our first panelist, Salih Serdar-Yunus from Turkey. Salih is a forest engineer and serves as a UN National Focal Point. He worked at the General Directorate of Combating Desertification and Erosion. He has been working on forestry, reforestation, afforestation, and combating desertification in the field and office over the past 3 decades. He has had the opportunity to observe the challenges that Turkey has faced in the LDN-related matters over the past 3 decades, so I guess he's really the right person to talk about LDN in Turkey. So thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jana. Thank you. Dear Chair, dear colleagues and ladies and gentlemen, my name is Serdar Yunus. I am the Assistant Focal Point of Turkey. Please let me give you a very brief information about the land degradation neutrality process in Turkey. Before I begin my speech, I would like to say that Turkey carried out studies similar to LDN extensively, and even before the concept of land degradation neutrality was developed. However, these studies couldn't be seen because they couldn't be reported to the international area. Now let me list Turkey's efforts. In October 2015, Turkey hosted UNCCD COP12. It was the first conference of parties in which LDN was integrated to the convention. Turkey was one of the countries that has declared willingness to set national LDN targets. During this COP, Turkey announced initiating the Ankara Initiative. Another important development is that the General Directorate of Combating Desertification and Erosion was established in 2011. This General Directorate works with the aim of formulating policies, synergies, plans and objective projects, and building coordination and cooperation between concerned institutions and organizations. We are coming to the 2016. LDN National Report of Turkey was prepared to set the national targets. These targets were planned to be updated with using LDN indicators and national monitoring systems. Now, I want to talk about an important project proposal for JEF 6 period, covering the Upper Sakarya Basin was prepared and funded by JEF. The project was initiated December 2019 and is being implemented by FAO in coordination of my General Directorate, General Directorate of Combating Desertification and Erosion. The project objective is to develop a model for LDN target setting, planning and decision making how this could be performed. First, strengthening the enabling environment for LDN was so important. For this purpose, awareness raising activities and capacity building at central and local level, ministry workers and local. Thank you.
So where are we now? The project started 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, and IDH, which is the executing agency of the LDNF staff, has identified around 14 entities which are eligible to receive the technical assistance, and already after important, we got some figures in mind in order to understand the scale about what we are speaking about, even if it's small orders. So in Uganda, you've got a major project partner, because you need a big project partner who is in fact the one willing to develop the business with some small farmers. So in Uganda, you've got a greenfield timber operator who has distributed 10 million seeds and of tree seedlings, to over 6,000 smaller farmers. So what is the plan to help those smaller farmers to ensure that they can accomplish making sure that we've got 7,000 acres to be planted with commercial timber species in such a way that and so what the technical assistance is doing, identification of the outgrowers, because we need to help these major greenfield timber plantations with their 10 million seeds. So identification of the outgrowers, helping them to become associations, helping them in order to make their business plan, helping them to basically Thank you, Jean-Marc, because you want to get feedback from the field. Right? And when you want feedback from the field, people start to go to concrete stuff. So I'm going to accelerate, I got the message, right? Just to give you an example of the kind of technical assistance. So basically the technical assistance facility is following the technical guidelines from the UNCCD development mechanism and the SPI. So we have to make sure that whatever is done by the smallholder farmers, it really fits the LDN plan. And on the other side, to make sure that the business plan works for the LDNF. So I've got some other examples, but I will go very quick. So what are the lessons learned? The lessons learned is that for IDH managing the tasks, at the early stage of identifying those kind of entity which can receive technical assistance, there is a very high risk of breaking down. I mean, you invest in technical assistance facility, you got a package for 24 months, but in fact, after 24 months, they are not eligible to the LDNF TAF. The second thing is that, yes, there is the LDNF, you are entering into pipeline, the entity is nearly ready to make a deal with the LDNF, but for other, I would say, outside fighters and the TAF, the deal doesn't come. So basically, you have not lost your technical assistance, but it did not end up with a contract. And when you are in the pipeline and you have done the deal with the LDNF TAF, sometime just after the deal closes, there is not enough bandwidth in the entity signing in order to bring an extra funding. So they are just limited with the LDNF TAF. So what is the lessons learned? There is no real existence or ready to be invested project when you got a lot of funding coming in. And starting to only target some beneficiary of one fund doesn't work. So the solution is to have a kind of, I would say, pépinière, as we say in French, nursery, thank you, Jean-Marc. A nursery of projects. So what we are doing now under the Jeff 7 with the support of the Jeff, still working with the IDH, is going to identify around 80 smallholders, farmers in the country, trying to identify around these 80, 30 which can really be ready for a roadmap investment, and then select at least 15 of them who's going to invest in a roadmap, and to identify at least 9 funds which might be interested in this kind of investment. So basically you are doing a nursery and you are doing an accelerator of potential beneficiaries of funds. What is interesting in all of this is that we're going to try to guarantee that at least 30% of the entity receiving the fund is going to be women-driven business. That is very important. And the second aspect is that we're going to develop with IDH a hub of knowledge management in order to provide some kind of guideline to the countries to see how you can really develop these nurseries, what it means for the financial sector, developing some financial pilot, I would say, schemes with the existing financial institutions in the countries, and from this hub to see the replicability of this hub in other countries. So I'm going to stop here, and sorry to move from 6 minutes to 8 minutes. Good enough.
Thank you. No, I really wanted to get I would agree to thank WWF for the good work made with IDH. If you remember all the discussion on ADN and the beginning of the ADN fund, there was not enough expectation, but also a lot of fear about especially the CSO, indigenous people, local communities, about how this fund will be going, working on the ground. And I guess in terms of safeguard and in terms of precautions, in terms of way of doing, they have been really using very high standards. And because we are the GEF, we are also behind them, asking, for working with countries where sometimes it's a little bit more difficult than in other regions. So we're asking to work in LDCs, in seats, and so on. And actually they open a window, a special window for the countries in the Great Green Wall. And 2022 should be the year for implementing a dozen of these projects. So we'll be very excited to follow this, the implementation of this project. Now, I don't know if Mark Aubrey is in the room, because he was supposed to be the next speaker about the private sector, so maybe he will join us later. So I would like to invite additional JEF agencies, actually. We have colleagues from IUCN, Mrs. Bora Masuboko, and who is a senior program officer at IUCN. She's based in Kenya. And she has been involved for a certain time on tools, policies, on rangelands and restoration on ADN. And we also I'm going to present them all together because there is a logic why they are here together. And Mr. Hernan Gonzalez, land degradation lead in the JEF team at FAO, is an economist at the JEF unit in FAO. He works on Latin America and Caribbean, Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and he has been involved in the JEF portfolio since 2005. He has been working with the World Bank, with FAO, with UNDP, so he knows well the JEF system. And actually, IUCN and FAO all together for the last report represent 2/3 of the JEF portfolio on land restoration. So I've been thinking that they were the right agencies to give us a feedback about restoration on the ground and the target. So Bora, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is working? Yes.
Your time is not over. You can speak.
So thank you very much, Jean-Marc, and good morning, everyone. So I'm very happy to be in this panel. IUCN, since the Land Regulation Authority was adopted, IUCN, which is a JEF accredited agency, has engaged in process to support target setting and also the development and implementation of projects, large-scale projects that will have delivered these targets. And in 2019, as part of this target setting project that was funded by the JEF, IUCN and the Global Mechanism of UNCCD published a study, which was actually a review of policy convergence between land degradation equality targets and forest landscape restoration. And one of the findings of this study was that there is no restoration investment devoted to rangelands. So from there, and with the evidence that rangelands are the dominant land cover drylands, that they cover more than 50% of all land on Earth, that they provide key ecosystem services. So from there, IUCN decided to accelerate the development of, let's say, rangelands projects. And so we now have a number of projects in the pipeline, and some projects that have also been approved and that are currently being implemented. We mentioned one project in Chad, in Western Chad. Okay, this one is part of the justice cycle, but still it is very important to mention it because it has success stories and it still contribute to address land degradation equality targets. So this project in Western Chad is trying to look at how they can rehabilitate some forest blocks and agricultural corridors to restore the connectivity between the degraded forest blocks. So one of the main issues in this project area is that the land was degraded because of water erosion due to runoff. And what happened is that the project provided a safe benefits related to food security, economic development, etc. So I will not be too long. I just want to say that the adopted, the nature-based solutions. And for us, nature-based solution is really the solution that the preferred solution to address ecosystem restoration and land restoration, because it addresses all these benefits. And the other important aspect that we need to mention is that it's also a way, I would say, land restoration is an entry point to also connect the different sectors, because land restoration falls under different ministries of agriculture, conservation of water, etc. So it's a way to also address how we can better coordinate the different policies and different actions. So, so this is what I have to say. So there's also practically, it's easy to address grant management, but there are also real challenges that are related to land governance, for instance. So these are cross-cutting issues, and also issues related to gender equity. And I think this is something that will be discussed during the next session. So it's important to address these issues. So it's important to address these issues so that we make sure that we involve the community, that we involve the land users in the restoration of their territory, because they are stewards of landscape that we include and fair knowledge that we include restore the ecosystem, and this is very important. I think that's all on my side. So these are my key messages. Really, these are the system approaches to address. I think that's all on my side. So these are my key messages. Really, look at the system approach restoration agenda as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. Round of applause for Barbara.
Land restoration and put this dredging restoration and the agenda and at the top of the restoration agenda as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. And there is that you highlighted principles project to the people on the ground, and this year the German agencies ready to jump to provide co-financing, but that who was provided logistical support to the opposition to turn on fairly, and it was really a very good complementarity. And this project was also made possible thanks to the people on the ground, thinking about the German cooperation, who provided co-financing, but who also provided logistical support to help the mission.
Land degradation neutrality is a relatively new concept and one that is not easy to apply on the ground. We were very lucky that the government of Turkey invited us to work with them on what will be our first land degradation neutrality. Land degradation neutrality is a relatively new concept and one that is not easy to apply on the ground. We were very lucky after COP12 that the government of Turkey invited us to work with them on what will be our first which has the objective to achieve land degradation as a strong partner in to work. That being so we would like to be a situation. In Jet 7, we led the development of the promote landscape and which has the objective to achieve land degradation neutrality. Provided very useful guidance on how to apply the energy project. So it's a complex topic, but there's a lot of partners who are willing to work together, and that has been very helpful. I want to leave you with 3 messages about our experience with the LDN process. The first one is that utility resources project, so it's a common with the topic, LD and target. There's a lot of plans, we really work together since that has been very important. We need to follow with the three lessons about our experience. One size does not fit all. The first one is third, boundary coordination and target separation is key for us to be LD and target. And reporting is key. So first, regarding alignment with the Untitled Chapter targets. One side here we're working with different levels. We're working at the project level, we're working at the boundary coordination and the data operation is key for us to be able to advance. When you plan your national target, keep some use level data regarding alignment with the statistically useful for us to develop the investments that we need to do. Here we're working at two different levels. So we're working at the projects and we're working at the national level of the targets. And the data you use for both of these is making decisions. When you plan your national target, you take the decision that will they invest where, but this is not useful for us that is aligned with the release of the old national. And so the project, it sounds easy, but it's not. Luckily, there's a lot of people working on this. We have WOCAT and have developed very good tools that were started with the working in Turkey. We're working together on that. IUCN has great tools, Conservation International. So there's a lot of people working on these tools that will help basically collect the data that you need and the approaches you need to be able to make sure that there's consistency with what the work that is done at the local level and that done at the planning level, at the national level. Second, one size does not fit all. We need to consider that what I said, national and local context. Again, there's lots of tools, so we need to be careful we don't die by tools. We need to make sure that we don't overwhelm countries. And here, the Joint Sustainable Landscape program that Jeff is funding is key. For example, with the communities of practice. There's an opportunity for us to get together and talk and make sure that we can give the countries what they need. Finally, transboundary coordination and cross-level cooperation. This is key. We need to make sure that farmers and government staff, they get together with their counterparts from other countries, from other regions. There needs to be feedback between them. And we as agencies, we're in a good opportunity to make sure that happens. And the JEF has been very supportive of this. For example, under the Joint Sustainable Landscape program, again, there's these regional exchange mechanisms where we're working together with the IUCN, and we see that the management issues that we're facing, for example, in Central Asia, are very similar to those that we're facing in Southern Africa. So we need to make this happen. In parallel, during JEF 7, we were very lucky, for example, in Latin America, the region that I manage, and we managed to get requests from governments. We're working in 8 LDM projects that are about to start. The Caribbean, 8 additional countries, they're also starting LDM processes. So there's an opportunity to make sure that there's a lot of exchange between the different countries, and we have a big responsibility in that. And finally, again, we need to cooperate. This is a very complex topic. There's a lot of people doing a lot of good work. And God also mentioned some topics that are coming up and that have been discussed in this talk. The issue of drought, the issue of tenure, and the integration of funding. There's a very nice experience in the Caribbean where the federal countries have developed a plan to basically deal with land degradation. And we started with the JEF project that is now hoping to be transformed into a historical project with the GCF financing. And they're already planning their funds to ensure that there's alignment between the different funds. So that's all from my side.
Thank you very much. So last but not least, if you are not familiar at GF, you may not know that you are very lucky because we have staff, we have the scientific, technical, and advisory panel. So it means that all our programs and projects are carefully scientifically reviewed, and they also produce a lot of information. And I asked to Graciela Mitch, who not only worked with the CST or the SPI, but the advisor of the staff. And all over this last year, in Jeff 7, we were lucky actually to have several publications related to the guidelines. And so I would be very pleased to, with a little bit of more experience in our application of these guidelines, if we can have a feedback from the application of this handbook and guidelines. So I'm going to put the PowerPoints. Thank you, and Godzilla, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jean-Marc. Yes, you always put the stuff on the limelight and ask us to deliver science that can be of practical application, so not easy. And Jean-Marc is correct. He asked me to speak about the guidelines, but then he says, well, once you have the guidelines, what's the next thing that you're going to do? And he also asked us to make a bit of a reflection in terms of the use of the guidelines as part of the PIF, the first part when we introduced the project to the JEF cycle. And that's where the staff, the scientific, technical, and advisory panel of the JEF provides always advice on what we think could be some good tips to improve the project. So in doing that, that work with the projects, with the help of Ulrich and Asha, we extracted from the database some projects that have already been approved and are under implementation. So it's the 8 that you see here on the screen that cover all of the continents, and they represent a collective JEF investment of $27 million. So what we did a rapid appraisal with my colleagues of staff, just looking for applications of where, what are the good things and where are still the gaps that perhaps we could think as to how they could be improved in future implementation. One thing is mindful that none of the projects that we have been appraising here has been completed, so some of them are in a more advanced state, but none of them fully completed. So the good things that we saw is that in general the principles of first I wanted to say what they did cover. The projects that we evaluated here for these 8 countries, they cover from LDN target setting on the design of LDN initial interventions that can address restoration and sustainable land management of pasture lands, which is one aspect that Laura was referring. But also they do have objectives that are related to regeneration of livelihoods and landscapes. They speak about biodiversity conservation and food security and resilient livelihoods. They also have some outcomes or objectives about improving equity, sustainability, and the resilience of and about comprehensive landscape management in forestry and agri-food systems. So you see that the principles of what LDN encompass that Jean-Marc was saying at the beginning are covered in these projects. And this is one of the things that we saw that those that are developing the projects and the countries themselves do understand what are the principles and what are the main conditions or the enabling environments for the countries to propose these projects. The next one, please, Jean-Marc. Yeah. So what we can, as a result, is the good things is these are the 5 modules of the land degradation neutrality conceptual framework that in the guidelines that staff did prepare for the JEF projects are reflected, and instructions are we've tried to be as practical as possible. And we know that what constitutes the setting the vision, the objectives and the targets, that has been very well captured, and we could say that this is understood. And I could, hearing what all the speakers said, is understanding that the need that the vision is shared or is understood by high-level central management or by the government, so that you get the support. We also see that the three indicators, the three global indicators have been used, but also we have examples like in Turkey that they have also gone to their own databases, and they have judged that the three indicators are not enough, and they bring in the complementary indicators, which is something that we propose or we say should be done once you're doing interventions at national level. And we saw that some countries, like for instance Georgia and Senegal, are seeing the projects not only as an ecological system, but as a socio-ecological system. And that is very important because countries like Senegal, for instance, and say we are going to propose interventions that are not to diminish the livelihoods or the well-being of the land users. And that's behind the principles of LDM. So that's the good things. In terms of what I would say the gaps that we noted is that red square, is the counterbalancing mechanism. So we all understand the indicators, we all understand where the baseline should be set, but what we could see less was an understanding of how you compensate if there are unavoidable and unanticipated losses, how you're going to counterbalance applying the principles of the life for life, so that at the end of the project implementation, whether that contribute to the national LDM targets, you are maintaining or enhancing the land-based natural capital. So that's amazing, and other things like understanding the concept of land potential. So it's not about the land cover and land use, it's about what the land is capable of delivering, and not setting interventions where the land has not the biological or it's not in the socio-ecological context to deliver that rainfall. So that for us was the main observation in terms of things that still be needing some more guidance, maybe, John Mark said, without overwhelming the countries. And I was saying on board as well, they need to have this concept of multi-scaling and to reflect interventions that are really global. And the second and last point was the fact of the importance of having integrated land use planning and embedding any planning of LDM interventions, so at least seeking to connect those interventions with the national land use planning system in whatever shape or form you have. Sometimes have centralized or have decentralized land use planning system. But and this is a report that the Science Policy Interface of the NCCP presented the day before yesterday on the need, and also on some guidance on how to make that happen, that connection of LDM interventions within the national land use planning system. So that's from my side, John Mark.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And really for all those who are involved in LDM target design, really I'm inviting you to check the website of the staff, check the guidelines, and look really they are very useful. I guess all the GEF agencies and partners have been using them a lot, so it's very good. I'm very thrilled to read the new report about the contribution of integrated land use planning and integrated landscape management, because I mean it's everywhere in the GEF strategy about local planning, land use planning, integrated management. So I guess I'm sure to be a new hit, the new bestseller of the staff. We're going to read that with a great interest. And also there are other very interesting publications about cross-cutting issues like resilience, governance, community, stakeholder platform, a lot of things that are important in our GEF portfolio, especially for sustainability and reinforcing the capacities in the countries for maintaining the outcomes when the project are closed. So thank you very much. You know that there are always frustrating parts in this kind of events because I'm sure that all the panelists would like to have more, and in general the time for questions is always very short, and we can take only 1, 2, 3 questions maybe, and then after there is no time for responses. So we are going to do our best to manage some questions. If there are some questions right now, we can take 1 or 2, and we take also other questions at the end of the session. So any questions, comments? or we can move forward the next session and we will keep your question after. I guess it's no need for me to make a conclusion. I guess it would be better to have a discussion during the third session on the way forward, because as you have seen, there is a kind of logical reasoning, to not say theory of change, but a logical reasoning about feedback from experiences, some cross-cutting issues like gender, and we'll talk about the way forward. So thank you for the panelists. Let's applaud, let's give a applause, and sit on the multiple of the floor. So I'm going to we're going to start the next session with a film. So the panelists should stay on the chair, because if they are going on stage, they are not going to sit to watch, they will not be able to watch the film. And then after we'll invite a guest from the MCD to follow up as a facilitator. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, guests and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Manish Kawai. I am the President of the Global Independent. I will be facilitating this session on failure and community development on our show. And this session will be discussing basically development and priorities in addressing land degradation and shared experiences from different levels, in country, Debt Secretariat, as well as from Jeff Edit. As we know, when we talk about gender mainstreaming, there are various challenges. It is in the form of internal participation, engaging women's organization, as well as gender disaggregated data at various levels. And it's also about the skills, knowledge, and ensuring access to information as well as financing. So these are major issues across the world, across the sectors, and that is not an exception. And land degradation has been affected half of the population, half of the globe, and its impact is different. When it goes to the women, it has diverse impact. Either it is in case of burden of care, or food security, or health, or training skills, or even land ownership. These are the different impacts that women have been facing differently than the men. So if we see scenario across the world, participation in decision-making processes is very low everywhere, irrespective of location, irrespective of teams and sectors. So to address those issues, different entities have been working closely in collaborating with different layers of organizations. UNCCD itself has adopted gender action plan to facilitate country parties to ensure mainstream gender across its interventions through providing technical inputs and guidance of that. And Jeff is also one of the major funding source, which is prioritizing gender mainstreaming as one of the key, and we are working closely with Jeff. And it's a gender policy and guideline which is comprehensive, and it has included different aspects of gender that will facilitate in mainstream gender across the project preparation processes. So, having said that, I would like to introduce some of the agenda item of this session. There will be panel discussion and question and answer. Before that, we'll be watching one third film, which is talking about gender issues. And then we'll also be presenting briefly about the gender responsive assessment tool. That will also give us an idea how it has been, how it would be possible to integrate gender issues in the land, sustainable land management area. So without further ado, I would like to ask to have for introducing this film.
Thank you, Ganesh. So the film, the video we propose to introduce this session, is entitled Through Her Eyes. And it's grown from ICRAF and their research projects all over the world. And especially ICRAF has been the main executive partner of the regional and prospective project under the Resilient Food System Program. The Resilient Food System Program was developed under the lead of IFAD, and it's one of the pilot programs in GEF 6 to test the integrated approach. So 12 countries from Sub-Saharan Africa were involved to foster resilience and sustainability in agro-ecosystem for food security. I'm very pleased to launch this video. Can you launch the video, please?
In the drylands of West Africa, rural communities are highly dependent on the wide range of trees found in the savanna landscape. Women in particular are the main beneficiaries of non-timber forest products derived from species like the shea, the nere, the tamarind, or the baobab. Throughout history, these products have been critically important for household consumption and for providing key sources of cash income. In this part of the world, the impact of land degradation, climate change, and diminishing tree cover has dramatically increased women's vulnerability. To make matters worse, existing social cultural norms are often restrictive and they offer limited opportunities for women to participate in and benefit from landscape restoration or other forestry initiatives. Gender inequity continues to be one of the most significant barriers to making livelihood and landscape more productive and resilient in the region, and social innovation are urgently needed. To challenge restrictive social norms and redress gender inequities, we must first understand how gender dynamics around natural resource management manifest in different environments. To do so, ICRAF scientists developed an innovative participatory approach that combined gender analysis tools with
Mrs. Nicole Harari to the dais. Similarly, I would also like to invite Ms. Rodia Gia, Project Manager for RFS project in Nigeria. The next panelist is Ms. Asabo Senators, who is the Environmental Assistance Secretary. And the last but not the least, Mrs. Femo Homo, Senior Technical Advisor at UN. Thank you so much, panelists. I would like to request Ms. Nicole for a short description on UNCCD OCAD gender responsive presentation.
Thank you very much. So my name is Nicola Ari. I'm from the University of Bern, where we are hosting WOCAT, the World Overview of Conservation Approaches and Technologies, Global Network on Sustainable Land Management. Maybe you have heard in the past few days a bit about WOCAT also in the plenary sessions, and we have heard that parties are invited to report their best practices through the WOCAT recommended UNCCD database. So having said that, to reflect about how we can better support parties in reporting their gender-responsive sustainable land management practices for those gender-responsive sustainable land management. So that's the graph here from the WOCAT database. We have around over 2,000 good practices in land management that parties, but also other stakeholders and the WOCAT consortium partners have entered into the database. It's written very, very small, so you can hardly read it. But this graph shows women, men, or both women and men involvement in good land management. And when we look at this, we can see that there are different technology groups, and in some of them, women are much more involved than in others. In some of them, this is the blue bar, we have only men involved, and in other technologies, we have both men and women involved. The involvement and engagement of women in all of these technologies, how can we design a tool that helps to understand what hinders women to be involved and what supports them and helps them to scale up a sustainable land management. So what we did in the past 2 years with Rokaya Idara from the UNCCD Secretariat, you have seen her in the Gender Caucus. She's leading many of the gender sessions here. We have developed this tool. It's a questionnaire. It's a tool in the form of a questionnaire which helps to add a gender lens to sustainable land management technologies and approaches. First and foremost, to, in a standardized way, assess their gender responsiveness. Then it helps to evaluate how gender responsiveness can be improved. So some technologies are already gender responsive, others aren't. So how can we improve them? How can we change their design? How can we enhance or improve their dissemination? So making sustainable land management beneficial for both women and men. And then eventually that tool helps and supports project planners, designers and implementers to identify also technologies which are relevant in their context so that they can actually scale gender responsive sustainable land management and implement them. So I have some flyers here if you are interested in the tool. You can download it here, I will distribute it later so you can have a look and see yourself if that tool is also relevant in your context for your projects and programs. Which knowledge gaps does the tool help to fill? So you can see we have divided
and that into two aspects. First and foremost, we are looking at technology-related aspects. So we are looking and evaluating access and control to main inputs. And you can see here that some results from applying the tool in case studies in over 15 countries with a lot of UNCCD focal points, but also mainly in the context of different JET projects. So you can see here under access and control to main inputs, we are looking at labor, we are looking at equipment, we are looking at plant and animal material, fertilizers and biocides and construction material to understand if only women or only men or mostly women, mostly men or both who have either access or control or those over such resources. Then that is very small, you can hardly see it, but in the middle with the colored bars you can see the gender-related impact of technology implementation. So when a technology is actually being implemented or possible to be implemented in a project, what impacts does it have on women and
Ms. Rodia Dia. Ms. Dia is the project manager for the RFS project in Nigeria. She was also involved in preparation of the learning node and gender issues of the JEF6 Resilient Food Systems program. She is a program development and management expert in socio-economic development, local governance, and environmental conservation in Nigeria. So, Ms. Ria, as a project manager and as your involvement in preparation of learning node, would you please share your experiences to the colleagues from Nigeria?
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning once again. Our project is one of the Resilient Food System project. It is implemented in 12 countries of Sub-Saharan Africa, of which Nigeria is one of it. It is debt-funded. The project, the 12 countries is being coordinated by ICRAFT in Nairobi. So it's a regional portfolio debt-funded project, and we happen to be one of the countries benefiting from this initiative. The title of our project is Fostering Sustainability and Resilience for Food Security in Savannah Zones of Northern Nigeria. The overall goal of the project is to enhance long-term sustainability and resilience for food production systems and to build greater community resilience for climate change and other shocks that drive food insecurity. We are working in northern Nigeria, in 7 states of northern Nigeria, with 14 local government and 70 project communities. And the project is basically targeting women and youth. So to reach out to women is a must for us, because women are one of the beneficiaries of the project, and we are expected to reach out to 14,000 women and 28,000 youth directly under this project. For the RFS project in 12 countries, gender is a cross-cutting issue, and they need to really do gender analysis and identify the needs, roles, and responsibilities of men and women has become a necessity. So at the inception of the project in Nigeria, we carried out a gender study to be able to establish a baseline to measure impacts of the project on men and women, to also identify gaps and have an equal engagement of men and women in the interventions that we'll be doing. And some of the results of the gender analysis shows that men dominate decision making in the family, and women don't have access to resources, both land and every other productive resources and intergenerational activities. In some of our communities, women are restricted to only households. Anything done outside the household, just like she mentioned, is like a taboo. So women don't have access to farm inputs, improved seed, and every other thing that they need to make a living. And in the project, we have 2 components. We have the on-farm activities, where farmers are trained on different climate-smart activities, technologies to improve farming and to increase their production, and at the same time protect the environment. So women that are into farming are benefiting from this. But we have to make conscious efforts to bring in women, because at the inception we encounter resistance from the communities. Some of the men said, no, we do not want our women to participate. So we have to change our strategy to first start sensitizing the men, engaging with them, the community leaders, allow their wives to participate, enumerating the benefits of these interventions to women. So at the end of it, some of those communities relaxed, and we were able to get full participation of women. At the point, we are even overwhelmed with the number of women that are participating in what we do. So for the on-farm activities, the training, the support, women fully participated. But the livelihood component is where we had to consciously set out some interventions strictly for women. In some of those interventions, we asked the communities, the women themselves, to tell us what they want. And coincidentally, the project did not really define or design what those livelihood options should be. So we were opportune to sit down with them, tell us what you can do that the project can support you, because they need finance, even to buy inputs, they need finance to support themselves, they need to have control, they need to have access to resources and control over those resources. So different communities came up with different livelihood options, both the youth and the women where the project supported them. Some of the initiatives, we have this compost making, because in Nigeria we are used to pit compost. But when one of the benefits we got from the project was an exchange visit, we went to Ghana sometimes in 2019, where we saw compost trenches, we adopted it, and now we have over 500 compost trenches being replicated by our community, and most of them are owned by women. Now they make their compost manure, they are even packaging it and selling it. Over 500 women are involved in that. We also have the honey intervention, beekeeping. And one in Nigeria, beekeeping is basically like a men's intervention. You hardly see women doing it. So one of the cooperative groups in some of our states said, we want to do beekeeping as our livelihood support component. But we are afraid of the dangers involved and all that. But with the modern beekeeping techniques, they were trained, you don't need to wear their protective clothing. And now these women have gone into beekeeping. We have over 1,400 of them now into beekeeping. They are now harvesting honey, packaging it, and selling it, because they are not able to meet up with the demands coming from the city for the honey. Because it is generally very difficult to get a pure honey. Most of the honey you see are adulterated, but this one is directly from the communities. And these women were trained, empowered, they were given beehives. Now, each beehive produces 20 liters of honey, and out of these 20 liters, you can harvest 20 liters 3 times in a year. So every 3 to 4 months, the honey gets matured and they harvest it. And some of them, we invest, you will see one woman having 2 to 3 beehives. That's like 60 liters of honey every 3 months. So they are actually making a lot of money from this livelihood component, and a lot of women are going into it. Some that are not even in our project communities are coming to learn, and the intervention is upscaling itself, and there is a high rate of adoption. And we also train them on processing and rice processing techniques. Now a lot of them are also processing. More than 2,500 women are now processing rice. It's a local way of processing, but the way it is done, if you see it, you will think it's like an imported rice. So our women are getting value from those new technology of processing. And we have empowered over 815 women too into goat rearing. The project is also trying to address nutrition among children under 5. And one of the areas we see that the nutrition is lacking is the milk. So we gave them goats in their cooperative group. If a woman is giving a goat, if the goat gives birth, the first issue of the goat will be given to another woman. By that, the goat will now go around. At the end of the day, all the women in each cooperative group will get a goat. And they were trained on how to access veterinary services for these goats, and how to milk and prepare those goats' milk and give it to their children. So this is one of the interventions that women are highly involved and they are actually benefiting from it. There is a market for goat meat and they are enjoying it. And their husbands are also supporting them because to get the goats feeding, they sometimes need to go out of their own environment. So their sons and their husbands go out, get the goats in and they take care of it. And this intervention has gotten a lot of adoption in the community. Women are being empowered, goats are going around. If I get now, after 3 months, another woman will get after 2 months. Sometimes one of the goats can give back to 3 at a time. So the intervention is out of it, they use it for cooking, and now they have alternative sources of fuel instead of using firewood. We have also linked some of our beneficiaries with private companies where they are supported in contract farming rice, and over 600 women have benefited from that. The company gets them input, seed, chemicals, and at the end of the day, they buy back the after harvest at premium price. And this also intervention has supported the women and has increased their income. So some of the learning from this project, our intervention, especially trying to increase women participation and empower them, shows that you need to engage the men at all levels and at all times. They have to be partners and they need to be sensitized to allow their wives to participate. My time is up. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your experience and encouraging learning. Being a man, myself I have one question here. Initially you mentioned that there was a resistance from the family. I hope it's particularly from the male members. So what you found after all when women got a benefit, they have a cash. I hope they have cash when they sell honey or gold or whatever they produce. What was the reaction from the family later on when you go back to to those communities, particularly from the side of men?
Yeah. Well, now the women have money. Some of them said, now we are part of decision making in the house. My husband doesn't take decision without me because I contribute. I pay school fees, I support the family. So it's actually overwhelming. That's why we're having a lot of women wanting to participate. And now, like the honey, men have also joined. It has become a family business. It's no more a woman thing. So I think sensitizing the men is key, and getting their support and their blessing is very, very necessary. Yeah.
Thank you so much for encouraging examples and experiences that you shared. I really appreciate such interventions that you made. Thank you so much. Now I would like to move to Ms. Asa Bob Semple, who is the environmental scientist at the JEF Secretariat, to tell us about gender issues in the JEF portfolio. As a specialist, and I also coordinate JEF work in the small island developing states here. So could you please share about your experiences and about some JEF portfolio?
Thank you. So I'll start by give you briefly an overall picture of how we incorporate gender within JEF operations. We've been doing this for some time, and I would say at the start of JEF 7, we really ramped up with the revision of our gender policy. And it sets out guiding principles and mandatory requirements for mainstreaming gender not only in our governance but in our projects and programs. And with this policy, we aim to ensure that there are equal opportunities for women and men to participate in, contribute to, and benefit from JEF finance projects while we work to achieve global environmental benefits. And in implementing this policy, we have two main means by which we assist countries and agencies to incorporate gender within their projects. We have a guidelines on gender equality, which provides detailed practical steps on how to build gender into your projects, develop gender-sensitive indicators, and so on. And we also have an open online course on gender and environment, which was developed jointly with UNDP and SGP, which actually has a specific module on land degradation and gender. So that has also been very useful. And what we've found at the portfolio level for JEF 7 is quite a few positive results. Our gender team has been carrying out assessments, and we're seeing that 90% of our projects are incorporating gender issues in initial project design, as well as including gender-sensitive indicators. And if we look at measures that are relevant to land degradation, our latest assessment is showing 87% of our projects are planning to contribute to improve the participation and decision-making of women in natural resources governance. 80% are targeting socio-economic benefits and services for women, and 60% are aiming to contribute to more equal access to and control of natural resources. So this is the overall portfolio picture. And in our report to this COP, UNCCD COP, which covered the last 2 years, what we've highlighted is how the land degradation focal area strategy of the JEF has tried to incorporate gender and mainstream gender within our objectives. So we've done this by looking at two areas of work, if you will, by looking at practical gender needs. So how do we improve conditions of women through access to resources, services, and opportunities? And then looking at more strategic entry points on empowering women to take decisions and be better represented in various decision-making bodies. And we find that this has been directly aligned with the UNCCD Gender Action Plan, and we hope it's helping countries to meet their objectives under the Gender Action Plan. To add to that, we've seen specifically in the last 2 years that our report is covering a few things. One, the land degradation focal area strategy has two objectives: to support on-the-ground implementation of LDN and to support the enabling environment for mainstreaming LDN. And we find that projects are using both of these objectives as entry points to strengthen and increase the participation of women in action on the ground, but as well as in leadership and decision-making activities. We've also found that our focus in the land degradation strategy on maintaining livelihoods has also enabled support in projects to address the barriers women face to economic empowerment. So across a range of projects within the land degradation portfolio, there are efforts to overcome barriers related to access to finance, unequal economic earning opportunities, and so on. And I remember our previous speaker had mentioned that the livelihood opportunities were not identified at project design stage for women, and this was a JEF 6 project. But as we enhanced our policy and framework for JEF 7, we are finding more of our projects at the design stage are actually identifying what are those livelihood opportunities earlier than when they were doing previously. So it's built into the project design. Another area we're noticing, which I would say it's happening less often than the other two is projects that are targeting efforts to consider women's access to resources. This we see a little less often, but I do have one example I'd like to highlight in Kenya, where the project was seeking to undertake a women's agricultural economic index in conjunction with the socio-economic baseline survey, and the results of this would inform the overall gender action plan for the project, and specifically identify steps needed to close the gender gap on access to and control over natural resources. So we have a few examples of equal balance in access to resources coming through our project, but not as many examples as we would find in the other two areas I mentioned in terms of decision making and reducing the barriers to livelihood opportunities. Finally, over the reporting period, we have also sought to support women's access to improved knowledge and technologies, not only through our country level projects, but also through strategic global projects. So you would find many of our LDN projects have a capacity building component. There's always very specific defined mechanisms of ensuring there's equal balance in capacity building for men and women. And we also have our very a few more strategic global projects, such as our Global Support Program, which is supporting the development of mechanisms to ensure capacity building of women at the national level for monitoring and reporting to the UNCCD. So this gives you an overall picture of how the JAC has incorporated gender in our portfolio as a whole, how we have translated that into the land degradation focal area, and some of the results that we're seeing. We do have a gender team at the JAC, of course, a gender team of one. But we support, we work together and we'll continue to monitor these results as time goes by. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Alpha, for your wonderful presentation.
I had also gone through the Coliseum tool. I really found that it is very, very helpful for the project preparation, because it has provided step-by-step guidance. What needs to be considered in the background, how to set project objectives and results. So this is really useful, and it will be very helpful for the preparation of gender responsive project. And also transforming gender responsibilities in the community. I would like to thank again for your intervention. Now I would like to go to Mrs. Femo. She is a Senior Technical Advisor in Sustainable Land Management and Restoration at UNDP Nature, Climate and Energy team, to give her point of view from Jeff agency. So it would be great if you could wear two hats, one as a Jeff agency and the other as a program manager. And I would like to request if you could be brief, so that there might be enough time for the question and answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting UNDP to this panel discussion. I'll start by saying for UNDP as a UN development agency, gender equality, we see it as a fundamental human right. So this is the departure point for our support countries in implementing and achieving the 2030 agenda and any other commitments that may make at the global level, including through conventions. So gender equality and women's empowerment are intrinsic to our human rights-based approach to development programming. And the idea here is to advocate for women's and girls' human rights, to combat discriminatory practices, to challenge the roles and stereotypes that create inequalities and exclusion of women. We have a strategic plan that has 6 signature solutions, and one of those is actually on gender equality and women's empowerment. So it's not just treated as a cost-cutting issue, but as a thematic program within the UNDP strategic plan. So our projects are informed usually by a gender analysis that is conducted at the beginning of project design, project and program design, and this guides implementation as well. We have a policy that requires that our programs comply with 3 different approaches, I'll call them, which we call a gender marker. So it has 3 sort of markers. One is on the program or project would be seen as being gender blind, which is obviously not ideal for any UNDP project. The second one is on being gender responsive, which all projects must strive to at least achieve at the minimum. And the other one is on gender transformative, which we all try to, which is the ideal situation that we try to strive for in our programming. So our JEF projects have to, at the minimum, be gender responsive and try as much as possible to be gender transformative. Our gender transformative projects are those that specifically are designed to address issues that are specific to women. So a lot of our projects end up on the gender responsive scale. We have a screening tool for all projects, whether they are JEF or non-JEF. This is part of the social and environmental safeguards policy that we have, which has now been formally approved by UNDP Executive Board in 2021. And all projects cannot be approved for submission, for instance, to the JEF if they have not been screened for social and environmental safeguards. And within this social and environmental safeguards and screening tool, gender equality and women's empowerment programming principle. So from the outset, projects have to sort of show how they contribute to gender equality and women's empowerment, and ensure that there is no discrimination of women and girls in the projects that have been designed. So our projects seek to identify and integrate different needs, constraints, contributions, and priorities of women and girls and boys and men into programming to ensure that both men and women are able to participate meaningfully in and ultimately have access to program and project resources and receive comparable social and economic benefits from these projects. Obviously, the idea is to promote gender equality and women's empowerment, to tackle structural challenges, and remove the institutional and societal, political, and legal barriers to accelerate gender equality and women's empowerment, and to go beyond just counting the numbers of beneficiaries by sex. So we seek to empower and create agency for women and men and close the gender gap. So the requirement is that projects do not discriminate or reinforce gender-based discrimination and or inequalities. They must ensure adequate allocation of financial resources for this aspect of gender equality and women's empowerment. A lot of the times you find that in projects, including JEF projects, there's a component at the bottom of the results framework on knowledge management, and it mixes gender in there and all of communication, all these other things that are sort of seen as side issues in design and implementation of projects. And a lot of the times the budget is not adequate to address everything. So I think with the JEF update and policy on gender, really pushing for these issues to be budgeted adequately, and we're now trying to enter the gender action plan into the CEO investment request. This I think helps to actually for agencies to actually concretely think about how to properly design activities that promote gender equality and women's empowerment, and as well for budget for them as well. So I think you may see that in the maybe just 8, there's a bit more increase in the allocation of the project budget for gender equality and women's empowerment issues. Of course, in the results framework, in the design of the project, we use gender disaggregated, sex disaggregated data and gender sensitive indicators in programming to ensure that we don't lump these issues and say we don't support women's issues, but without actually saying how we should do it and how many women and men will cover. Sometimes we actually, when we do annual reporting in the projects, and report that women were trained and men were trained, they target 30% men and the rest are women, and we ask the tough questions. Why can't it be 50-50? Or in some cases, why can't it even be 60% women and 40% men if the gender analysis is showing that women have lower access to resources and participation and decision making? We actually push for, if you like, some bias towards stronger participation or inclusion of women in some of these activities. Of course, sometimes the empowerment of women and girls comes with problems, creates challenges for relationships between men and women, including at household levels. The empowerment of women, for example, from the Nigerian project, with women having more access to income from project activities could lead to friction in the household, where men feel that women are now too empowered or have access to resources that they don't have. So this is also important to ensure that the projects don't lead to things like gender-based violence in the household because women are now more empowered. So it's important to include men in awareness raising and in implementation of project activities so that they don't see this as something that challenges them and their power, they say, but also but seeks to empower equal participation and realize the benefits for both men and women in the empowerment of women. So for us as an organization, of course, there is overall corporate policy on zero tolerance for discrimination and gender-based violence or sexual exploitation. And this is therefore weaved into all project programming and project design and implementation and reporting to demonstrate that we treat this as a fundamental human right that every human being must be afforded. I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tanu, for your intervention. I like one of the, one point that highlighted is mainstreaming gender may not be sufficient. There should be, to mainstream gender, single cross-cutting approach should not be put in place. There should be specific, sector-specific, theme-specific intervention that could be there, so that mainstreaming can be achieved. So, with this note, I would like to again thank you all of the panelists, and I would like to open the floor for questions. When asking questions, please be specific so that many questions can be taken from the floor. The floor is open for the questions, please. I think there is no hand. It's crystal clear. So I would like to thank panelists and all. Oh, sorry. There's one hand, please.
Thank you very much to panelists. My name is Rebecca. I am from my question is just brief to the name, but the lady from the JEF, to say that the policies and the strategies of the JEF, you mentioned that, now we're looking also at action on the ground, in terms of women participation or gender, mainstreaming. Now I'm just wondering whether the JEF is actually thinking, as well about when we talk about land restoration, in terms of the UNCCD, there's actually extra work for women to do. And besides, they are also
the people that care for their babies. Is there any chance that the draft could be thinking about, care points where women could actually have their children there while they are doing the action on the ground? Because here you're getting additional work for the woman and as well as the baby on the back. So yeah, it's. I'm just wondering whether there's any thoughts towards that. Thank you.
My colleague is laughing at me because he knows I can't answer that question. No, that's fine. The JEF, that is a very, I would say, downstream question. So the JEF provides financing for the projects. We review and approve the project design together with our implementing agencies such as the UNDP. And so adaptive management or detailed actions that consider trade-offs or unexpected disadvantages or circumstances for beneficiaries is something that would have to be worked out at project design stage with all the stakeholders involved. And so if the project is designed in a collaborative way, including women from the very beginning, then there's an opportunity for them to bring in these challenges that they may foresee, and that should then be worked into the design of the project. So we would expect that to happen at that stage. Yeah? And then we would review, our gender specialists would review the project, and where necessary, we may make suggestions. But that's where we expect that challenge to be dealt with first.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I wanted to add like a agency point of view. So she's correct. And this is why the gender analysis is important during the design phase of the project, because this is where a participatory approach to conducting a gender analysis would reveal the types of differentiated impacts of whatever the problem that needs to be addressed would be on men and women and youth and different types of groups. And the gender action plan would come out of the gender analysis, and the activities that end up in the gender action plan would be suggested, in fact, by the stakeholders themselves, the project beneficiaries and participants. And this is hopefully would integrate into the project design things that actually work and reduce minimize the risks and problems for different groups that are part of the project or the landscape where the project is being implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you, panelists, for your intervention. Thank you, colleagues, for your active participation. With this note, I would like to stop here. And if you have any questions, you may ask to the panelists bilateral also, if they are available. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you. Back to you,
Thank you. I'm going to give the mic to my colleague from the staff, Guadalupe, who's going to participate in the next session. Just one point, there is another form here. I don't know. Yes. Okay. Did you want there is a logo of FAO everywhere? One of them is form.
Good morning, everyone. So I have the pleasure of facilitating session 3. It's the last but not least. So welcome to session 3, LDN. Where do we go from here? My name is Guadalupe Durones. Jean-Marc introduced me. I am a program officer in the Secretariat to the Scientific and Technical Advisory Panel, otherwise known as STAP. In this session, we will hear from a group of panelists who have a variety of experience on LDN to help us reflect on the way forward. As we have heard throughout the week, LDN is rooted on integrated and collaborative processes that can address degradation, such as drought. It can also support levers of transformation to achieve multiple benefits that are necessary to achieve LDN. And
achieve well-being and also multiple benefits for environment and people. So in this context, let us think throughout this session how we can use LDN for cross-cutting and cross-sectoral approaches in countries, including, like I said, to achieve drought resilience, coherence between policies, responsible governance of land tenure, gender-responsive actions, as we've heard our colleagues discuss, and engaging the private sector to leverage efforts on restoration. So before we start hearing from our discussants, we're going to watch two videos. The first video is going to focus on improved livelihoods and restoration of the Chikrosa pine in Pakistan. It's a FAO project. And the second video, also a FAO, from the FAO project, will take us to Cambodia to see some of their work on forest and landscape restoration. And the reason why we selected these two films is because they highlight important aspects of land degradation neutrality in TBC. So for example, they highlight experiences at scale in Pakistan and in Cambodia. And in both experiences, restoration is connected to sustainable value chains to generate income, improve livelihoods, and achieve a number of socioeconomic benefits that provide incentives for sustainable forest landscape management. We've heard from a couple of speakers before. I think it was Aura who underlined the importance of achieving benefits, socioeconomic benefits in order to achieve global environmental benefits. And you'll see a little bit of that in one of these videos. Yes, and also the video showed the importance of enhancing livelihoods and also in working with the community to identify solutions for restoration. So let me, Jean-Marc, will you help me run the video? Sorry. Jean-Marc is going to help me to run the video. So as you watch the videos, please reflect on these issues that we've just, that I just raised in terms of socioeconomic benefits, issues of scale, issues of bringing together stakeholders and the importance of defining solutions together across sectors and across actors. Thanks. He will be followed by Mr. Mark Dupree, a low emission climate specialist, president of Impact2 and CEO of the Green Investment Africa. I think that's right. Okay, great. Then we will be hearing from Ms. Graciela Metternich, my colleague at staff, and Elmias de Maria. Graciela was a former member of the Science Policy Interface, Elmias is now a member of the Science Policy Interface, and he's also a scientist at the World Agroforestry Center. Oh, thank you. And then we will hear from Ms. Louise Baker about her thoughts on the future of LDN from the perspective of the global mechanism which she directs. And we will lastly hear from my colleague Ulrich Appel about the role of LDN in JAFE. So without further delay, Ms. Karina, por favor. Yes, and can the other guest speakers please go to the table? Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. Huge difference. Yes, can you go to the head table, please? Can everybody go to the head? Well, the guest speakers. And then, yeah, I'm sorry, Karina, about your nameplate. So Ecuador has been part of the land degradation neutrality setting program, and they also developed a JEF 7 $4.4 million project entitled LDN Target Setting and Restoration of Degraded Landscapes in the Western Andes and coastal areas. They developed that project in partnership with FAO. So Ms. Karina is going to tell us a little bit more about the experiences of Ecuador in terms of developing an LDN project and implementing the LDN concept. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to be with you today. Thank you for having me here. Could you go to the next one, please? I would like to say very quickly an introduction related to the climate change in Ecuador. Ecuador, as you can see, we have different regions. We have highlands, we have in the western, we have the Amazonic region, and we have the coast, and we have the Galapagos Island too. So we are affected by all of the types of climate change that you can see. For example, we have reviewed in our data around the years that the effects of drought associated with the weather phenomena known as Niña, it's very visible in Ecuador. This phenomenon is responsible for the floods and for the drought in Bolivia, Ecuador, Peru, and Argentina too. We have effects in health. Our studies said that the high temperatures have been increasing sick like dengue, Zika, chikungunya. It is proof that with the temperature, this kind of disease has increased. On the other hand, we know that the snow-capped mountains of the Cordillera Occidental have lost about 40% of the surface area. All of these phenomena are associated with the climate change. And respect of the drought, we have reviewed, when we reviewed our drought national plan, we studied the effects of drought. We reviewed that we have 100 drought events during the last years, and we have lost more than $400 million just for effects of the drought. The main crops affected by the climate change are rice, coffee, cocoa, maize, and beans. This was important information because the decision makers need numbers to make decisions. So it's important to know how the economic sector is affected by climate change and the growth as a main threat in Ecuador.
We studied the degradation of the land and we reviewed that the 19% of the continental territory of Ecuador is undergoing a strong and extreme process of land degradation. It's important to say that because this study helps us to focalize our priorities and to decide in which places we have to intervene. Then the project that will be developed with F7 was focused in some specific provinces of Ecuador. We are working in this project in the coast zone. As you know, Ecuador is different because we have a lot of water in the Amazonia. The climate change is affecting the increase of water in the Amazonia. But in the coast, we are going to suffer those. So this project is focused in Manabi, Santa Elena, in some projects and some provinces of the highlands. This is important to say that the project was developed with different actors. For example, the Minister of Environment, Water and Ecological Transition, and we are working together with the Minister of Agriculture, and we work with FAO and the implementing agency from the Sun. This has been developed. This project has taken us 2 years, in 2020 to 2022. And we have been working together in order to have this decision first, the places to intervene, and then what are the main activities that we are instituting in the project. The main project has 4 pillars. The first one is strengthening the regulatory conditions for the monitoring land degradation. We are going to set our new goals. This is the main issue. We want to set the goals and to define the main strategies and work together with the national level and the subnational level in order to find specific goals. The second issue is to showcase the R&D and approaches to the territory with specific missions and in 3 landscapes. I would like to say that we have some challenges, and I think that maybe it's the same challenge with other people in other countries. We have to integrate the action. We cannot work without the other convention mechanisms. For example, the national growth plan should be part of our national adaptation plan. And we want to introduce and to mix these criteria with other criteria like red glass, reduction of deforestation, of emissions from deforestation, and degradation. We want to include all of these tools as part of our concepts and our goals. So, and we want to implement and to improve and replace all of this framework with some initiatives that we have in other places. And the third one is fostering and innovative incentives, mechanisms that encourage people, so private sector and public sector, to include or to be part of the sustainable land management system. We have some experience working with the financial sector, and we know that it's very important because we have new specific credit lines with a low rate interest rate to be a good motor to foster the private sector inclusion in this project. And we have some experiences in incentives with the agriculturists. We have worked with
to say and to point out that it's important to integrate the different kinds of tools of conservation. Otherwise, our resources are not going to be enough to satisfy all of our necessities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karina. That was very interesting to hear. And as you pointed out, integration and multi-stakeholder dialogue take time. So thank you for reminding us of that. Next, let's hear from Mr. Chris Dickinson from the Green Climate Fund, who will tell us about the role of GCF in landscape restoration and potentially the role of GCF in LDN. Thanks.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Dickinson. I'm an ecosystem management specialist at the Green Climate Fund. I'm happy to be here today. So first of all, before I continue, I would like to ask a question. How many people, can you raise your hand if you are involved in a GCF project? Anyone? Okay, let's go to the panel. Okay, and how about GF projects? Okay, let's have some from different countries. Okay, excellent. So, and how many of these projects have links between GCF and GF projects? How about me? One? Okay. That's quite low. Actually, it's about 40 projects where there are synergies between GCF and GF. So that's good. So first of all, I'd just like to explain about the Green Climate Fund. We're the largest climate finance organisation in the world. We've invested $7 billion of investments, which accounts to about 47 billion in co-funding, covering a lot of results areas, interesting today, from ecosystems, forestry, land use, agriculture, water, and even energy. We even see energy is important for forest landscape restoration. So we cover a lot of things which contribute towards land degradation targets. And the GF long-term vision has been designed and currently implemented with GCF and GF partners, how to really bring maximum complementarity and learning from existing programs. So we have examples, for example, the IPAD Sahel project, which has using the GF existing framework for monitoring. We have projects where we're looking at co-funding, such as the Ivory Coast Cocoa project, which has GF on it. We're also looking at projects to upscale the GF projects. So there's a number of different issues where we're working together. How do we improve on this? So this is one of the problems that we have with GF and GCF have different focal points. We encourage countries to make sure they work together. We're starting to discuss and plan projects at origination level. So again, for a large workshops, we're starting to discuss. And also, we identify good lessons and tools that can be completed by the GF projects and try to scale them. I'd like to also challenge my GF colleagues. Maybe we could go through identifying 12 climate finance tools, the best case studies or examples that have been completed by GF, and see how we can integrate those into GCF projects. For example, in Tenure, there's a really fantastic water fund, which is working with downstream users of water, without payments for upstream land managers to stop land degradation. I think that's implemented with a number of partners, funded by GF, also involving IPAD and FNC. Maybe there are other models like this that we could integrate for really scaling up land restoration. So GCF projects don't reinvent the wheel, and we learn from their best experiences. Other examples that we have are, for example, at Fort Everyone in January, there was a large program approved called Agri-One, which is working with IPAD and other partners to look at climate finance, to provide farmers money for adaptation and mitigation, and climate smart agriculture. But the third component of this is known as the regional support program. So this is looking at the existing 30 projects which GCF runs in the Great Wall countries and future ones to try to look at how we share knowledge amongst the GCF projects, but also we're hoping with the GF projects. So we can really develop a collaborative tool of working together, of learning from knowledge from successes and learning from failures to look at innovations, how to upscale those, and also how to communicate the success to the private sector, to other donors and clients. I think this could be a very good model for integrating across other regions in Africa, Latin America, and the Pacific, and Asia. We also have 30, 40 programs already where the same form of collaboration, and I think it's really good to try to start to document the existing cooperation mechanisms that we're doing to scale up. GCF also has a number of sex guides which are on our website. Using them. I think these are also useful for GF and GCF project designers to look at, to try to use this information and examples of paradigms, financial instruments, and land restoration methodologies to integrate this into GF and GCF programs. And this can also be used for use project preparation facility. And some of the really good examples already have been used to mobilize additional funding, which is the Untitled Chapter project, which is in preserving forest stripping land regulation, and I think it's been used by the direct to upscale the sort of model to other areas in the world. So, a few thoughts on complementarity and coherence between the two frameworks, and hopefully we can go ahead and allow more projects with developing country charters to meet transformational goals and help create really large transformational change amongst farmers and land managers across the world.
Approach. We heard about Ecuador. We also heard about the GCF. But I'm going to talk to you on a ground experience, an experience from the ground. And it's based and linked to a project here in Côte d'Ivoire, in the western part of Côte d'Ivoire, around the Tai National Park. Tai National Park is one of the latest parks remaining of biosphère in Côte d'Ivoire and in West Africa. The idea is that this project is a very interesting private-public partnership project for payment for environmental services with the chocolate maker Mondelez, the international firm Mondelez, the Red Plus Secretariat in Côte d'Ivoire, and we, as an implementing organization and partner, we are tasked to implement the project on the ground. This PES project is based on 3 modalities. The first one is agroforestry. The second one is conservation, and the third one is reforestation. The specific context of Côte d'Ivoire is the alarming deforestation rate, and we are also used to say that we are here for desertification, but desertification is also coming from deforestation. So maybe it is the first and relevant step. And within the 3 modalities, the idea is to have a kind of transformation approach of a landscape, because payment for environmental services also means that you need to engage all the stakeholders on the landscape in order for them to develop a common vision to how tackle deforestation together. And I think that it's also this project about sustainability, because it is combining the environmental aspect, fighting against deforestation. It is combining also with the social approaches, because we are empowering women with the DSLA. We are engaging all the community to develop a common vision for preserving the forest. And it's also about an economic approach, because as you know, payment for environmental services is also a question of incentive to also bring on the table the value of the capital, the natural capital value, and in order at the end of the day to make sure that the farmer and the community will also benefit from this capital, natural capital. So this is the sustainable project, but also the thing is that we have also to focus on multi-sectoral dialogue and platform. On this landscape approach, the idea is to say that not only one value chain will have the solution. The main, let's say, commitment is coming from the cocoa value chain. But if you don't have the palm oil value chain, the timber value chain involved, and all the other ones, you will not have success. If, apart from the agri value chain, you don't have the mining value chain, which is also a driver for deforestation, you will not have success. If you don't have the community, if you don't have the leaders of the communities, the traditional leaders, the chiefs, etc., you won't have any success. The women, the youth, etc. So at the end of the day, this multi-stakeholder platform is also building dialogues among all these stakeholders in order to make deforestation, fighting against deforestation becoming a reality. And Pactum is delivering on a day-to-day basis this project, but it's also coming with finance issues. And this is why I'm happy to have Chris Dickinson from the Green Climate Fund and also the Jeff here on this dialogue. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have sustainable finance mechanism in order to sustain all the activities and the effort to tackle deforestation and to preserve the environment, then you have an issue and you won't have success. We also work on that to define and develop what we call an FSM, the Financial Sustainability Mechanism, to make sure that apart from what Mondelez has put on the table, we can also have other commitments, other pledges and commitments from other donors, and also from multilateral and bilateral donors. But at the end of the day, also by investors, some who may be interested in investing in the carbon, for example, maybe interested in investing in the timber and have also return of that. So bringing together all the potential investors in the same basket fund to be able to say that once Mondelez will have maybe ended with his investment, then we will have a solid and robust mechanism to have a sustained financing system. We would say that finally, this project will not have success without getting involved totally the communities. And we have a debate here in Côte d'Ivoire on how to define, structure the carbon benefit sharing mechanism, because carbon now is coming as also an opportunity. But communities want to know also how will they be involved within this distribution of the carbon dividend or revenues. And this is also part of the sustainability, to know that if the communities are not fully involved, if they will not find any interest, economic or social interest, at the end of the day, we will not have the same success for the project. This is for the Payment for Environmental Services project, but we are also within Pactum working with other donors, private, but also public international as UNDP, in order to involve youth, in order to involve communities in developing activities around agroforestry, around deforestation, and around conservation. So this is what I would like to share with you as a very practical experience initiative on a ground experience basis, and I will be very ready and happy to have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dupré. We're going to wait for questions after the panel is done with their presentation. So we again heard from Mr. Dupré about the importance of co-benefits in order to achieve any benefits, in order to achieve global environmental benefits. So that was stressed very much, and also about community participation in defining solutions. So this is a really nice link to our next speaker, Graciela Metternich, who also will be followed by Ermias. And they will both speak about science, about the land degradation neutrality concept and how to implement it. We heard from previous speakers, Ednan actually, who said, from FAO, who said it's a great concept, but it's really hard to do in practice. So we're going to turn now over to two scientists who have some experience in designing the conceptual framework for land degradation neutrality and also in developing practical advice. Over to you, Graciela. Oh, Ermias goes first. Okay,
Yeah.
first. Okay.
Because oftentimes you say ladies first and then you say that's not the other way around. So sometimes it's really okay. Thank you very much. So I'm Ermias Pitamara from the World Agroforestry Center based in Nairobi, and a researcher and also a member of the Science Policy Interface of the UN. Yeah, so I think I would like to thank Jake for giving me this opportunity to speak what I think, and then as a science researcher, not like practical research. And then I would like to really start with, science for what? Science for policy, that's what we are doing, and then also science for practice. And then maybe we may move science for policy and practice. And then I will be interested. So when I say practice, and then one of the big problems I heard from the convention during the meetings that we have and then elsewhere, there is a bit of implementation gap on the ground. Because there are a lot of policy commitments, a lot of land restoration commitments, a lot of political goodwill, and the people say that there is a bit of gap on the implementation side. So that means science also needs to help that direction, because at the end of the day, it's not the commitment, it is what's happening on the ground, and then I think science has to really do a bit more on the practice, how to do it. And then also when you do research, oftentimes it is very easier to see what to do. Answering the what question is not very difficult. And then if you want to implement, really we need to answer those how. So I think we need to take the right question, because all of us more or less, now we know the need of land. We have already known sort of the consequence of land and ecosystem degradation and then all of that. And then we know also a lot of what to do. So I think the next phase of science, I think, to help really, how to do it on the ground, and I think that would be one of the interesting things. So I think as a science, and then what we are really trying to address is really try to reduce decision uncertainties in investment. Like for instance, the climate fund would like to put a carbon project in a very dry land area, and then the target could be to increase soil organic carbon by 1%. But science could come and say that, look, in this kind of ecosystems, whatsoever sustainable land management we do, the natural potential of the area cannot allow you to do it.
So the investment, instead of increasing carbon, it could be protecting the carbon we have in the system. That's why avoid, reduce, and the reverse is a concept that we in Mississippi came up with. So where do we do what? So that kind of spatial targeting planning could be really well supported, and then by doing so we can really reduce uncertainties on investment and decisions we are making on the ground. So I think that's why we are providing evidence is one of these. And then also we bring some concepts from science, like for instance, I was attending a session on G20 initiative on regreening, and the Middle East initiative for regreening, in the Saudi Arabia initiative for regreening. And all of them, the way they have them, is really targeting to plant billions of trees on the United States. There is nothing wrong with it, but the concept I told them that instead of planting trees, why don't you say growing trees? In whichever way you do it. Then when you grow, that makes sense. But what we need at the end is the outcome, is not the process. So the outcome would be nice. So we are going to have this number of trees in my landscape, and instead of I'm going to plant this number of trees. So that's how we need to really solve the problems, socio-political problems of the ground. So science is bringing this kind of concept so that it could be well understood. But then this is at the what, and then if I answer how, then is really to do research in actual development. Because previously the concept is you do research for development, science for development, but now decisions are in real time happening. So what we need to do is really we need to do research within the implementation process. In doing so, some of the practices that we never been reported could come to science. Because when you do science, we do literature review, and then it has to be published. Some countries may not write in French, some countries may not write in a different language. But when you do research on the practices, those knowledge could come into the global knowledge database, by which they could be reachable, so that we are not always focusing on what is the scientific literature saying. And then the science has to go to the local practices, and then the local practices also have to come to the science side, and then I think that's where I see the mechanism is really how do we research within research projects. Yes, and then I think the other gap I have seen is also on monitoring, because there is one principle that we never stop learning. And then we will learn when you practice, implement, and then monitor for continuous learning and then adaptive management. So in that case, even as a CTI, we give always recommendations, we give a lot of ideas, and then it will be negotiated and then accepted. But as a scientist, we never get a feedback mechanism by which, oh, look, you recommended this policy proposal, and then what was the reaction by country parties after a year or two? That would really help us even to gear down and fine-tune and adjust the way we give the recommendation. So to do that, for instance, I mean, like JET or Climate Fund, they could have a kind of a project how STI could work with global mechanisms, for example. And how do we work also on the ground with countries? So that could really give us a kind of feedback mechanism to really, rethink and then adjust and as we go. Yes, and then maybe my last point is also, there is a lot of knowledge, a lot of tools, a lot of methods, and then let me tell you one thing, and one researcher, he's a colleague of mine from Germany, he said that, all these tools are becoming like toothbrushes, because everybody would like to use only for himself, and they don't want to use the others. So there are a lot of tools, a lot of networks, but really how to make them really effective is really more important to me. So for that, I also say that